So here we're going to be learning about lighting our scene. So we have this scene, and if you actually go into the render viewport, you actually see that we just have a blue thing. So normally it just comes in as white. So we're going to be adding some light to it, and then we're also going to prepare the scene so that we can be able to render it, and then we're going to add audio to this particular animation that we're doing. So first, the thing we want to do is we already have this black background, and but I don't want to use this. So the kind of rendering I want to do, I want to be able to just make it a bit unique. So I'm going to just go to M. I'll press M and move this to another layer. So I have another collection. Collections are more like a collection of different things. If you look at here, I've already hidden it. You can find it if you press N on your keyboard. You can go to the third section here, and then you have go down, you have your collection. So I have this collection of some things I have done before, so I can be able to move it to this collection, hide, and this thing is hidden. If you just close the eye, you actually see that it's hidden now. So anything that is there is hidden. So the first thing I want to do is that I want to put a background that I want to use. So the kind of rendering I want to do, I want to do a sort of back, dark background rendering where the light will just be focused on this particular uh, mesh or this particular model we have created. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'll press Shift A. I'm going to get a circle, and this circle I'm going to scale it and bring this a bit down here. So it's just going to be something like this. So I will try to make it to be in the center as much as possible. So bring this to the center of this, because we're going to be using this to rotate it when we're going to be rendering. We're going to animate it to render it. So over here we can be able to enter into edit mode, select our edge selection mode, and press A to select all the edges, and press F on the keyboard. Once you press F, it will add a face to it. Now let me go into the solid viewport so you can see these things properly. So this is what you're going to be seeing. So we can just do E and bring this down a bit, and I would like to do it a second time. So why I'm doing this, so that in case I add something like a subdivision modifier, it doesn't really begin to malfunction. So if I just put the second one, and I think my proportionality is turned on, so I'm going to remove it. So I can just drag this down a bit more like this. So if you have something like this is what you're looking for. Now we want to be able to pull this down a bit to that level. Now I'm going to add a subdivision modifier to this. You can actually use a bevel, but I think subdivision will do a good job for us. So I'm going to go to my modifier and get my subdivision modifier. And now you see what you're going to be seeing here. So I'm going to enter into edit mode and press Ctrl R. I'm going to put a new loop cut here. Just go to the edge like this. If you go to the center, it will give you a vertical one, but if you go to the edge, this particular edge, it will give you a horizontal one. So you can click, and then you can pull this up a bit like this. Ctrl R, click for the down one, and then pull this one down like this. So now you can be able to have something that is going up and down. So if you don't put this extra loop cut, if you look, I have an extra loop cut here, another one that is down here. So that's the goal of what we're actually trying to do. So that's the second one there, down there. So now I can right click and do my auto smooth to actually get a very smooth thing here. You can also press Ctrl A to apply the scale in case you are it begins to actually malfunction when you do certain things. So I have this now. I'm going to look at it from different perspective and be sure that it's looking good. So now I've already finished adding my texture, so I'm going to just quickly add a simple texture to this one. So before I start doing my lighting. So I'm going to make this my let's call it floor background. Now I'm going to go into my render mode so you actually see what this looks like. So right now it doesn't look interesting because it's just using the normal light. So let's start from when you're lighting a scene. The first light we're going to be looking at is the environment lighting. Okay, so we have what we call HDR image that we can use to light, but we're going to talk about that for today. we're going to just be using the default world properties. So if I enter into the world properties, you see that I have my background already there. If you click, you can actually, if you go to here, you can select different kinds of backgrounds. You can have a real sky, okay? But right now, we don't want to talk about that. We just want to do a simple light. So if you look at here, I can just bring this down to a dark color. I can even go for a blue color. So if you look at what is happening now, this is what we're looking at. Remember, we said that the kind of rendering we want to do is where the entire background is dark, while just this the light will actually be focused on this particular model that we already have here. So here, if you look at here, this is the strength, and you can be able to reduce the strength. And if you look at, once I start reducing, only what you're seeing is just the lights. Okay, so this means that whenever I begin to add any light in this scene, you actually see the impact of that light. So let's save and make sure we are working together. So we'll have something that looks like this. Now, the first kind of light, if you talk about light, so we have we have different kinds of light. Let me just go into that. If you press Shift A and you go to your lights, you can be able to, you have different kind of light. So we have the point light. So the point light is a light that you add to a scene, and evenly it will just distribute light around the entire environment. Then you have the sunlight. Sunlight acts like the sun. It's more like directional. It's focused on a particular direction, but it's going to be working more like the sun. So we use this mostly for outdoor lights. But if you want to do indoor lights, even make sure you use the point light. Then we have the spotlight. The spotlight is just focused on one particular direction. So let's say, for example, you are in a disco light, you want your thing to be focused on a particular sport. You can actually use your spotlight to actually focus on a particular sport. All right, so the other lights will have the spotlight. So the spotlight just focuses on one particular sport. So just like if you have all the stage light where you have the spotlight, being cast on a particular person, so you can be able to use the spotlight for that. Then the area light is more like a directional light, but it's just focused on a particular direction. That's the thing. It's more like the point light, but it just focuses on one direction. It doesn't go around evenly. So this one is something an add-on you turn on for getting the 3-point light, and that's what I'm going to be showing you now. So you can actually select something here and add a 3-point light on it. So if you select this, you can just do your Shift A and add a 3-point light. Okay, so but the key thing, let me just do it manually so you understand what the 3-point light really is. So the 3-point light will have 3 lights. So we'll have what we call the key light. The key light is the main light that lights up the scene. Okay, now let's try and let me use it on this so that we can actually see what it looks like. So I'm going to get this 3-point light. So if you look at now, but if you look at what is happening here, it gives you 3 lights. So you have here, one light is the key light, the other one will be the fill light, and the last one at the back will be the rim light. Now, before I talk about what these things are really doing, now if you notice, it's not showing any effect because I just added this as a manual thing, like an add-on. So the add-on is over here. If you go to your edit preference and you go to your add-ons, so if you're using the newer versions of Blender, you have to actually go to your extensions to download it. So I think that should be 3-point lights. Let me see if there's a name here. Points lights, the tri-light, that's the name of the add-on here. So you have to turn this on. If you turn it on and you just go over here and save, so you can just type lights and it will just get this tri-light, so you can be able to use that. So what it does for you is that it just pulls this for you and automatically pins it to this. So but I will prefer, I'm just showing this in case you are confused and you want to just have help doing that, but I'm going to just do this myself. So I'm going to select this and delete it. So the first light I'm going to put now is what I call the key lights. So the key light, I'm just going to click on my 3D cursor here and I'm going to add a light here. So I'm going to be using the point light for this one. You can actually use the area light for it. So I'll put my key light here. So the key light is more like the light that lights up the entire scene, like the main light. That's what we call it, key light. So the key light, let's say for example, if you look at the scene, depending on how huge your scene is, You know, sometimes if you look at this grid system and you see that my model is quite very big, normally it should even be smaller. So whenever you have a very huge model, depending if you didn't, maybe you are just modeling, you're not looking at scale, you actually see that you might need to increase your light. So if I go into my point light, look at here. So the first thing I have here is the color of the light. So but here I have the power, so I can go for, let's say 222. So if you look at now, the light is showing now. Okay, so this is the key light. So this will determine like the key place, or the main light that is actually lighting up this particular model. So I can, let's say I go forward to let's say 555, and you have something like this now. Now, the next light you want to use is what we call the fill light, Fill. The fill light is going to be a bit less than this particular light. Like now I'm using here, this is about 555. So let's say, for example, I could actually reduce this to about, let's say 100. Now, the job of this light is to act as something that's more like when light is, if you actually imagine if you are sitting inside a house and the light comes from the window, okay, and shines on your face. You see that the part where the light is actually coming to your face, it's going to be brighter, but the other side is going to be less brighter. So the whole idea is that the fill light will just fill up the part that where the light maybe is not able to touch, so that the other details, like if you look at here now, the details around here, we can't see the back here. Look at here, the back. We can't really see what's happening there, but we want the light to be there. We just want it to be a bit, as if it's diffusing the light from here to the back here. So let's say I increase this about 222. So if you look at here now, I need to bring this a bit down. So I'm trying to see these things here, but I don't want it to be as bright as this one that is over here. That's the whole idea. So you want this one to be bigger. That's the key light should be bigger than the fill light. So this is just something. Now, if you want to really test and see if this is working, you can just select the key light and press H to hide it. Now, if you look at now, you see that the fill light is actually doing some job of, lighten up this particular back of this thing. So let me just press Alt H and bring back that. Let me move this out to my hide. And then if you actually do the same thing for this one, if you just select this and hide, you actually see that that's the work. So you use this particular technique to be able to check when if your lights are actually having some effect, because if they're not having an effect, there is no need for you to have them there. They all have to have a role they are playing. If you're putting, even if you like to put more than one, more than 3 lights, you have to make sure that the light is doing a job wherever it is. So now, when I have the third light, which is actually the rim light, okay. So the rim light is the light that is actually going to be pulling out this thing in the background. So right now, there are some models you're going to be seeing online, and you see that it has a background like a white background. So that white background is basically something that, or maybe a black background if you have something like that. Let's say, for example, I want to render this. Now I'm going to go over here. Look at this. I'm going to just turn this off. So if you look at here now, so we need a light that will actually make sure that it doesn't, for any reason, right now it's actually looking very good. So we want to put a light at the back that will also light up, put some kind of effect in case this particular model begins to, go into the background too much. It's just a light that pulls that thing out of the background. Okay, so let me just show you here. I'm going to bring this back. Just click on this to bring all those details back. Now I can just press Shift D to just duplicate the light again, and I'm going to move this one. So the third light I'm doing now is what we call the rim light, RIM, the rim light. So the rim light, most times you can actually change the type of light you're using here. There are people that actually use point lights or spotlight to do that. So you can also use your area light if you want to. So but I'm going to be using point light for all my lighting for this particular model. So look at what I'm really doing here. I'm going to bring this light somewhere here, and I'm going to reduce this about, let's say 10. And let me be looking at this from here. Let me just see something here, and just slowly increase your lights. It's not something, there's no formula to it. This is just more like an artistic thing that you're doing, so you don't have to think too much about it. or let it, bother you too much. You just have to look at what is good and what is not good. So those are the things you're actually trying to, observe. So now let's test this light. I'm going to select this one and the key light and the fill light and hide them, and let's see what this rim light is actually doing. So if you look at rim light, it's removing it from the background. Now we don't, it's not really so necessary here because there is no back, like there is no particular floor at this back here, so it's not really so necessary. But if you look at here, it's having some effect over here, and personally I use this to do some kind of effect. Let's say for example I want to have some kind of tinted floor like this. If you look at what is happening here now, so a way of being able to mimic some kind of light from this glowing object here, you understand? So it's just going to actually give it some kind of feel. So if you look at, even if you just look at this light here now, you actually see that just that alone is already making this look interesting. I'm just putting the rim light only, and is even able to show me something. It's pulling the entire model out of the background. Now if I press Alt H to bring out all the other lights, you actually see that the entire light is actually coming out now. So what I will do now is I'm going to select, let me just turn this on again, select my fill light. Now if you want your light to be more interesting, you can actually use some kind of color light if that's what you're looking for. You see, if you change your light color, you can actually have some things depending on what you're looking for. Your light can actually change everything you're doing. So if you see here, you can actually add different kind of lights. So but if you want to go for just like a sort of sci-fi thing, you can actually make everything more like a blue kind of thing. So once you come in here, you actually see this is the kind of light we're actually seeing. So now I'm going to put this in a position that I like, understand? So we'll have this here, and we'll have something that looks like this. Now for the floor here, I'm going to, let me bring this back. I'm going to look at this and let me just increase the metallic so that it's a bit shiny. I don't want it to be too flat. And then metallic will make it shiny, and then roughness will also make it a bit more shiny. So metallic just makes it look like metal. Okay, that's in the materials. Okay, I think I've talked about that when we did the material for this thing here. So I'm going to just come in here and put in my roughness. So if you look at here, we'll have something like this, and I'm going to just save this. So this is what we have now. So the environment light is just this way. So if you increase this light, if you look at here, you can actually have that kind of background. But I like making this background for this kind of model that I'm doing now. So there are models you're doing and you decide that you want it to have a sort of white background or different kind of background. It all depends on what you're actually going for. So right now, what I really want to do is to position this in a sort of form that it's a sort of way that I can be able to see certain details. So you can actually have your take shots of your model from different angles. So you see, I can be able to actually go from different angles to do that. So this is my key angle of where I want to go for. So now just turn this. So whenever you turn these things off, you actually see that all your grid lines and things that you don't want to render, even your camera, disappears. So this is what we're going to be using, or we want to just focus on what this thing will look like. This is real-time rendering because we're using Eevee. So now another thing you need to add is this. Go to your render properties and make sure you have turned on your ambient occlusion. This is usually turned off by default, your bloom. If you're using older versions like 4.1 and down, so but if you're using newer versions like 4.3, I think 4.4, you'll be using you'll be turning on, instead of turning on this screen space in that one, you'll be seeing ray tracing there. You can turn it on. But if you're using the older versions like 4.1 down, you can just come in here, turn on this screen space. If you look at the screen space, it helps you to bring like the shiny materials and all those stuff to begin to actually work. So right now we'll have something that looks like that. And this is just a very simple light that we have added. So it all depends on what you're trying to do. If you have a scene, you can add your lights to actually make it look very interesting. So now let's position this properly now. So I want to be able to position my camera for rendering. Okay, so now I can just press 0 on my keyboard and I have this. But if I want, let's say for example, I want to view this from this direction. All right, I want this to view this way. So what I could do, I will press Control Alt, hold Control and press Alt on my keyboard, and then press the numbers pad 0. So if you have turned on your numbers, you can just put 0. Okay. If this is not working, if your 0 at the top is not working, just go over to Edit, go to your preference, go to your inputs, and turn on this Emulate Num keypad. Just check this box, go over here and save it. Now if you press Ctrl Alt 0, it whenever you move to a particular location and you just a particular perspective of your design or your model, you just press Ctrl Alt 0 and it will lock your camera to it. So this is my camera now that I have here. Okay, by default your camera is always there in your scene, so you can select it, press G to grab it to balance it the way you want it. Now when you're rendering, make sure that what you're rendering is in the center of your scene, because that is the safe zone. You don't want to render something and then you have your scene over somewhere here, and then you imagine what are you really trying to show people. Okay, so you have to make sure that the main render should be in your center, so that you are trying to show the person that is seeing whatever you're doing certain things. Now let's say for example you want to show some details here, you can actually add lights close to this place to actually highlight all those things. So but for now we're just going to leave all those things for now. So here I already added this here, so I'm going to be adding one more thing. So what I'm going to be doing next is to add an audio. So there are several ways to add audios. There is a way to add audio. You can actually use your Shift A and add a speaker and add an audio. But this thing is more like a directional thing. It's something that we use in animations. Maybe you want music to be playing in a particular room inside a building, inside your animation. So you can use a speaker, you put it there. It's just like a 3D. It doesn't show. It's just like an invisible thing. But whenever it's playing, if you go far from that location, the volume just reduces. So the right way to render, to put audio that will render properly. Now this is how you do that. So you can just scroll like this and go to this plus sign here, and you click on plus, and now you can go to video editing. And in my video editing, I'm going to be adding this video editing here. So this is just like an editor that enables me to add audios. So once you go there, make sure you go back to your 0 point here. Okay, I'm going to start from the first frame. So make sure in the first frame, look at it here, I'm in the first frame. Now I'm going to start searching for what I want. So I'm going to go to add here. So you have different things you can add. This is actually the video editor that Blender has. So but here you just add sound only. So I'm going to click on the sound, and I'm going to go get the link for my sound. So I'm going to just click and get my sound, and let's say for example I get this one here. If I play, so for as long as I want the animation to play, this is what it's going to be doing. So I'm going to go back to this my layout here, and I'm putting this because I want to show you how to render both picture and also how to render your animations, your videos. So once you add this now what we want to do, because we want to also render an animation, we're going to just do a slight animation on this particular model because we want it to be rotating. So what we're going to do to make it rotate, I'm going to select this one here and hold shift on my keyboard, select the floor here and press Ctrl P and then keep transform. Now the reason I'm doing this is so that when I begin to animate this, let's say I press R, Z and rotate, you see that I'm rotating that particular floor, but the entire bike is actually, the scooter is actually moving along with it. So that's what I want to do for a very short animation I'm going to be rendering. So once I do that, I'm going to turn on to be able to animate. I think I've already taught you about to animate. So if you come in here, get the auto keyframing, I'll click on keying here, and I have my location and rotation already turned on here. And I can just press, let me just go back to my first frame and press I on my keyboard. Sorry, I have to go back to the first frame. Press I on my keyboard to get my first keyframe. Then I'm going to go over here now to 250 frames, to the frame 250. So this is more like about 10 seconds. I'll press N on my keyboard, and if you come over here to that's this first option here, okay, in the panel, I'm pressing N to bring it out. So if you look at here, you can actually move it this way, and you see I'm selecting this floor and I can move it here. Now imagine if I want this to rotate about 2 times, I can do something very simple. I can just type 360. I'll press shift and press 8. That's the asterisk sign, and press 2. So that means I'm telling you to rotate 360 degrees twice. I can press enter and then press I over this. Okay, so when you play now, you see that it's playing both the sound and also animating it. So if you actually turn off these things here, this is what you're going to really see here. So if you see how it's rotating, if it's too fast, you can be able to, if it's too fast, you can elongate this, you can increase it. But if it's too slow, you can bring this closer this way. So this depends on how your scene is and how you want to really make it look. So right now we'll have a very simple scene, and it's just the scooter on a platform, and we're rendering it on a very dark background. So we're just focusing on this particular thing here. Now we have added our audio and the audio, and we also have animated this. So we want to be able to then go into the rendering process. So I'm going to be showing you 2 key ways to render. Now, if you render this way, okay, we're not going to be talking about the Cycles rendering engine. So if you click it, you see that you have Cycles. It will give you a more realistic rendering, but we're not going to talk about that now. So we're going to be talking about just the Eevee rendering for now. So if you look at this looks nice. So, and this Eevee rendering works on most laptops. Cycles might take a bit of time. So, but I'll be talking about that later. So now, if I come in here, I want to render this into a picture or a video. So rendering means converting this 3D scene. If you look at this 3D scene inside my Blender software, I want to convert this 3D scene into a picture that I can post on Instagram or Facebook. Or I want to turn it into a video, like an animation that I can be able to put somewhere else. Okay, we'll have different formats we can be able to. That's what rendering is all about, converting the 3D scene into a video or picture. That's what rendering really is. So now to do that, we're going to be going to our rendering properties. So if you look at here, here we already have rendering properties, and we have Eevee. We're using Eevee for this. Now if you come in here, some of you will be seeing something like 60 or any other thing. So the sampling here is a sampling that is more like how realistic it's going to look. But the truth is this: even if you have about, let's say, 100 here, I don't know the default because I think I've changed this one. Let's say you have 100 over here. It will take more time than when you have 5 here. The same thing is applicable when you're using Cycles or render engine. Okay, if you're using Cycles, the same thing is applicable. So, but let's focus on Eevee for now. This is the Eevee render. It's a real-time rendering engine. Real-time means that what you see is what you get. This is actually how my scene is going to look like. This is something that wasn't possible in Blender 2.79. You can't really see what you want to, what you're going to render in real time like this. You see, as I'm moving right now, I'm seeing exactly what I'm going to render. So now, if you put this here, this will be faster. Okay, it will render faster. This is the viewport sampling that is showing me over here. Okay, you can actually increase it, but there is the difference is not much. You won't even notice it. Okay, so I would advise you not to even go there. So make sure you have turned on your ambient occlusion, your bloom, your screen space reflection, and this refraction here. And if you are going to be making things move and you want to put motion blur to make it more, let's say for example you are animating a car moving very fast, you want the motion to actually blur sometimes when the car is actually moving very fast, you can turn on this. So these are things, and we also have things like volumetrics, but that one is a bit more advanced. It's for making things like fog and all this kind of God ray, if you know what's God ray, and like light coming out of the clouds. So things like that, that's what volumetrics are actually used for. So over here now, let me go to the next thing here for our rendering. So we have the output properties. So the output properties is where we're going to be outputting our picture or animation, whatever we're actually rendering, okay? So I'm going to just come in here and I'm going to press 0 to lock this to my camera. So this is the camera view I'm actually seeing. This is what I'm going to see. If I render a picture, this is what I'm going to be able to see. So by default, we already have this 920 to 1080. So that's the HD. If you want to go for 4K, you just go get the resolution for 4K. I think that's 4000 something. I think this multiplied by 4 times or something. And you get a 4K if you want to go for 4K. So this is where you actually set the resolution of your animation, okay? Then here, your frame rate, you set your frame rate. If you want it to be more, you can actually set it from here, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing something like a movie that has a lot of slow motion, you might want to increase your frame rate so that when you do your slow motion, the animation will not be jumping, okay? If it's actually, let's say, 24 frames, and you make the thing to be going on slow motion for, like, let's say you make the slow motion too much, the animation will begin to jump. It will become so obvious that you're actually doing, like, this is not realistic. So but if you increase it, let's say for example 240 or thereabout, you actually see that even if you slow it down very very well, like there's this movie where they did someone that is actually running very fast, but every other person is slow, but just like a flash, something like flash, okay? What they do in that particular thing is to actually increase the frame rate of that particular person, so that when you slow the person down, the person will still be moving in a very smooth way. You get the point? It won't look like it's jumping, and because there are few frames in the image or in the animation. So over here, I'm going to just come in here, just leave other things. So the most important thing here is this guy here, the output, the place you are actually sending your outputs. So you click here and then you go select the place where your output is going to be going. So let's say for example, I want my output to be going over here. So I can call this my scooter animation. Let's say 2. I think I have already one there. So I'm going to just come in here and click on accept. So once I click on accept, it's going to accept that, okay? So but if you look at here, let me just go back, let me click here. So this is the name of the file I'm trying to render. This is the folder. You can actually create a new folder for it if you want. You can go back, go to any other folder that you actually want and actually create that. So but here I want this to be here, so I'm going to just click on accept, and I have this here now. Now the next thing here, if you click here now, by default is usually set to PNG. Now if you're going to render in PNG, the reason why you render in PNG is if you have a huge project that you're going to render for days. There are animation projects you're rendering. You imagine if you're rendering like about 10,000 frames of animation, okay? You want to render them in PNG, then later you bring them together into your video file. But that one is a bit more advanced. I won't be talking about that. We are going to be doing straight rendering, okay? So the straight one is this FFmpeg here, video here. So if you just select this will be rendering to mkv file, .mkv file. So mkv files are very good because even if your animation doesn't finish rendering, anyway it stops, the file will just give you what you already have. It will just stop there. That's the good part about mkv. So just use this mkv, okay? Don't use this avi jpg. It might not really give you what you want, or this avi raw. Some of these files are huge files. Just use mkv. It's very, you put it there. Later I will still be showing how to use CapCut to edit videos, and so that you can be able to add other things to it. So but you can also edit videos inside Blender too. So if I come in here now, I can just go down. So I want my audio right now is just rendering only the video. That's what it's rendering. If I'm going to use picture, it's going to render just picture here. The format here is audio. Okay, if I want to render multiple pictures, I use PNG. If I want to render or JPG, anyone I want. If I want to render a video, I'll use this FFmpeg. Okay, now I'm going to go down. I want the audio to also come out. If you want the audio to come out, you have to go down here and get your audio. Look at my audio down here, okay? You can leave all these settings for now. Go to audio. See, I don't have any audio, so that means that if I render this animation, my audio will not even play. It will not even show. So I have to go here, click, and it will ask me what kind of audio do you want to use. I'll say okay, I want to use mp3 for this animation. So I put my this audio here. So that means that it's going to be rendering, and it's going to be rendering to my, the audio format will be actually MP3. That's what it's going to be using. Now let's go into the rendering. So we have done the render properties and the output settings. That's what we have done here now. Now let's go into the rendering, the two types of rendering. So we'll have what we'll call the normal rendering and the real-time rendering. The normal rendering and the real-time rendering. So let's talk about normal rendering first. So if you go to render properties here and you click on render, now we're going to just try this out so you actually see the difference. So if I click on render image, it's going to render my picture for me. It will just render a picture. So the picture is just one picture. So if you look at now, I have this here now. So, but what it's doing right now is that it's rendering, and even what I didn't want to render, that particular thing I hid, is also rendering. That's one problem with this particular one. So for you to be able to use that, you have to make sure that you go to, let me go to where I have that, my render, my hide, and I'm going to tell it, please, I don't want you to render. Look at here, I'm going to disable render because it's already turned off. So, but I also want to make sure it's not rendering. Okay, so let's try this again. So I'm going to click on render, and this is my outliner. Okay, so you can be able to get all your objects from there. This is my hide collection. So I'll click on render again and render image. Now let's note how fast or how slow it is. So it's taking a bit of time, and it gives us this render, and this is cool. Okay, so and the good part about this is that if you have compositing effects, like if you look at this, my render, it has some shiny thing because I already added some compositing effects on it to make it, a bit better. You get it? But if you look at this thing, it's actually shiny. That's the good part about render. That's a normal rendering, the standard rendering. Okay, so to save this file now to my scene, I will go to image here and click on save as. Okay, so let me just go to where I have this, and let me create a new folder for it. Let me just call this my scooter picture, or scooter 1. Let me call it scooter EV 1. So this is what is going to be now. Now, if I want to render it as an animation, I can just click here and click on render animation. I won't do that because it will take a bit of time. So you just click it and you just wait for it and until it actually finishes. Okay. Now that's a normal rendering. If you just click on it, it will just go and save it at this particular spot. If you set it to PNG, it will render 250 pictures for you. If you set it at this MP format, FFmpeg, it will render it into about 10 seconds animation video for you in MKV format. Now that's for your normal rendering, your standard rendering. Okay, this is what I recommend if you're doing something very, very serious. But there are some jobs you're doing and you want to render first. Like you want to render exactly what you're seeing to know if this is really exactly what you want or not. So we're going to be using what we call the real-time rendering. The real-time rendering enables you to render what you're seeing in your viewports. It's faster and it's more effective when you're doing certain kind of job. In fact, there are jobs you do like this one now. If you look at this looks good already. You get a point. So it depends on what you're trying to go for though. So, but I'm going to be using the real-time rendering for this. So when you're using the real-time rendering, make sure these things are turned off. Okay, the first thing you do, come over here, click here and turn this off. Make sure you are locked on your camera. Okay, you press 0. You're locked on your camera because whatever it sees in the viewport is what it's going to render. If these things are turned on, it will render even these lines you're seeing now, even these things you're seeing, it will render everything. So you need to turn these things off to make sure it's going to be giving you exactly this particular scene. Okay, that's the first thing you need to do. Now you now go to your view here, make sure in your layout so it's easy for you to find this. Go to your view. So we have a render image, viewport render image. Now this is faster, and there are some rendering you do and you just need it only for that, like the way it's looking nice, looks nice. Okay, so but when you want to add more effect, that's when you go for the normal rendering. So if I come in here, I can do viewport render image. So now watch, if I click on that, it will be a bit faster than the other one that I just did, depending on the effect. So but if you look at now, that glowing thing is no more happening here. That's the thing, because it's just showing me exactly what is seen in the viewport. So once I do this now, I can be able to also still go to image. So if I render an image you have to save it directly from here. So image, I can just do EV2. And the difference is not so much. Okay, let me just show you. If you look at both of them now, you see that this one is brighter while this one is less bright. So if you look at now, this is brighter and less bright. So that's the good part about having the render. So I added some things to it. That's the reason why it's actually brighter. That one is on compositing. That's a bit more advanced thing that you can be able to do. So now coming up here, let's now go for our normal our viewport animation. So if you come in here, you can actually go for your viewport rendering. So the viewport rendering will render the entire animation, and this is faster than this one, than the normal rendering here. It's faster. So because it's not going to be taking into consideration to like some effects, I added some kind of glare to this place. So if you had some other kind of effect that will change maybe the color of the entire scene or make it look in a different way, all those things will make this rendering to actually take more time. So but if you are doing this directly, you can just do viewport. If this is what you're looking for, you just do your viewport rendering, and this is very very fast. If you're using a very powerful system, some of them can actually, you know, a 250 frame animation can take, if you have a very strong system, it can take less than 10 minutes to be able to render. So if you look at my own, it's just rendering 7, 8. This is how it's going. But if I'm doing things like cycles, it's going to take a bit of time. Okay, so I'll be treating cycles render as a different topic on its own so that it doesn't confuse. So we're just doing real-time rendering. So this is how you can be able to render animation. If you look at how it's going now, you see that it's actually moving, and it's rendering with the audio too. So that's basically the whole idea of adding your lights, adding your audio, and also rendering your animation to a picture or a video. So that's all we're going to do for today's class.